Pust, ani padaidut kaminie. Could you understand what I just said? Unless you speak Russian, you would never be able to understand the words, "Let the little children come to me." Jesus wants to speak to all children in every land, and your church's Sunday school can help. For just $5 per book, your students can adopt an LHF mission project that will provide Bible storybooks to waiting children in other lands. Learn more at lhfmissions.org/children.
Listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
And I'm Rachel.
Today is a Rachel's Big Question, where Rachel is asking a big question, which is very exciting, I think. I hope.
It is. Let me just crawl out from under the bed right now because these big question episodes, we do them because, they are things people need and want to talk about, but some of them are kind of scary. Some of them are a little controversial, and I'm not a controversial person, but, sometimes I'm the person to talk through a question, and I definitely am today, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, these are like the vulnerability episodes.
Yes, laid it all out there. But this is an RBQ, a Rachel's Big Question, although I think today we might call it a really big question.
Whoa.
This is inspired by the August issue of the Lutheran Witness, which is all about education.
Yeah.
And so we are asking the question that I have asked myself regularly for the last 15 years. How should I educate my kids?
That is a really big question.
It is. And it's not one that anyone can answer for anybody else, honestly.
Yeah.
It is a question that comes up regularly for many families, especially at this time of year when you're staring down your choices, getting ready to start a new school year. And it's important that it's a question that we keep asking ourselves because we love our kids. We want them to be well educated. We want them to be prepared to take over this world as leaders of their families, as leaders in their churches, and as leaders in society at large. This is our job as parents, get them ready for what comes next after we're gone.
Yeah.
And so we have pressures coming on us from both the government and the church, the word of the Lord, that are both encouraging us to pay attention to this education question. So the law of the land requires that parents ensure their children receive at least a basic level of elementary and secondary education in usually prescribed subjects like math and English and science and social studies. As my kids ask me sometimes, why do we have to do school? And I say, because the law says so. This is not optional. Depending on where you live, from roughly age 6 to 17, your kids have to be in school and they have to be learning specified things. But that's only one side of the pressure. The other side, of course, comes from God's word, because scripture also encouraged us to be intentional about educating our children. So Deuteronomy 6, God says of his laws, quote, "You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." This educating your children in the laws of God was not optional for them. It was essential.
Yeah.
Proverbs 22 tells us famously, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it." What a great promise.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Paul in Ephesians 6 urges Christian fathers especially, but parents more generally, to, quote, "bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." So this is a big deal. What do we not hear in those scriptures?
How to do it.
How to do it, yes. Doesn't say, the Deuteronomy says basically make this a whole life project.
Yeah,
but
I was gonna say that one is probably the most explicit.
Yeah.
But it's still not very detailed.
Yeah.
And honestly, there aren't that many scriptures that address this very specifically, this issue of education. thinking back to our modesty episode, there were way more scriptures scattered throughout that big question conversation than there. Like, basically, you've just heard the big three right here. It's just, this
Which
is
to
it.
me means there's a lot of freedom here.
Yeah.
Like,
There's a lot of freedom.
This is an area of freedom. There isn't one right way or many wrong ways. There's, it doesn't specify that. So you have a lot of room to play in this area.
You do. And it's worth mentioning that even though the state education departments make a big deal about things like math and English and science and social studies, you don't hear about that in the scriptures.
I mean, you do hear about the English Standard Version, right?
Right.
So that is in there.
Yes, I suppose so.
Okay.
But it comes down to it. Moses and Solomon and Paul, the people who, wrote those passages, don't seem to care two figs about whether your kids know how to diagram sentences or solve equations, or whether their education is going to prepare them for a lucrative career in a STEM field after graduation.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not the priority.
Yeah.
Yes. Cultural context.
Yes. But what is important, and this is a takeaway for all time, is that our children know the Lord and be taught to walk according to his word.
Yep.
Like, that doesn't change. So yes, there's a lot of freedom, but there's a lot of dynamic tension in our educational decisions, because we're always pulled, and here we go with the good Lutheran doctrine term here, between the two kingdoms.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So the kingdom of the left demands that our children be educated to be good citizens, whatever that means anymore, and productive contributors within the national and the global economy. Like, one school we went to said that they wanted kids to be college and career ready. That was their goal.
Yeah.
Ready for college, ready for careers. That's it. But the kingdom of the right demands that our children be taught God's law and gospel and trained to walk in the light of Christ.
Yeah.
And if you draw a Venn diagram with those two sets of goals, there's really not a whole lot of overlap.
Yeah. There's a little about like
a little when it comes
your
to
neighbor and being faithful in vocation, but even that gets a little squishy.
Yeah, it's like there's a little tiny wedge. It would sure be a lot easier if there was more overlap, to chart your course this way. So how then do we navigate these conflicting sets of priorities and choose the educational options that work for each family? Well, that is tough. And even making it tougher is the fact that every family, and in fact, every child, is different. Like, there's no one size fits all. Some families have one parent at home. Some families are single parent families. Some families are dual income, where each parent has one or even two or three jobs. Some families, by God's grace, can afford private tuition. Some families just can't. Some families live in urban areas with easy access to a ton of options. Other families live in rural areas with very few choices. Some families have a house full of kids. Some only have one or two, and they might be close or far apart in age. Some families have children with special needs who need extra help and accommodations. Others may have, gifted children who need those greater challenges and opportunities in order to thrive as students. So, there's just no cookie cutter kind of thing. And even within a family, different children might have different needs, goals, personalities that need to be taken into account. Like, I know families where they may have 4 or 5 children and they may have 4 or 5 different educational things going on.
Yeah.
Because they've looked at it and said, this one thing won't work for all of these kids.
Yeah.
So no one size fits all. And yes, that has been definitely true in my own life.
Okay.
You all know this. I have 4 kids. I can't believe that I now have a freshman and a sophomore in college.
How?
I don't know.
Wait, what? You both? Yeah.
Yeah. And then I have a rising freshman in high school and a rising fifth grader.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been like trying to figure this out for a long time, and we move a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which means we have to recalculate everything every time we move. And so as a result, our family has done 2 different public schools, a charter school, 3 different Lutheran schools, and 2 separate stints at homeschooling.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been there.
University.
Yeah.
And now, yes, now university. So yes. And there are pros and cons to each one of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mostly what I want to talk about in this episode. Mm-hmm. This conversation, even though obviously we've done a lot of different things in our school journey, is not comprehensive.
Right.
And it also is not prescriptive.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. I wish I could tell you exactly what to do in your scenario and exactly which school option is going to be the best fit for your family and create thriving intellectual lives for your children, but I just can't. And even if I could, I don't think I want to.
Not the point.
No, not the point. Once again, Rachel asks the big question and then doesn't actually answer the question.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's kind of how we do a lot of these episodes.
But I do want to sort of walk you through some of our decisions, some of our experiences, and talk honestly and practically through the various options we have experienced and share what has worked and not worked for our family and each of our kids.
Yeah.
But before I begin, and I know we've talked about this in a previous Bray's Big Question episode, does Lutheran education make you a Lutheran? That was a great question. We'll link to that in the show notes if you missed it the first time around. But I want to ask each of you, I know neither of you has children in the home at present, but look back at your own educational choices. How were you educated? And do you see any immediate pros and cons of the choices your parents made?
So I've been Lutheran educated from preschool all the way through grad school. So my entire experience and my future vocational educational endeavors also will be, Lord willing, at a Lutheran institution. So I'm of a fully Lutheran educated life.
It would be strange to change now. So.
Right? Why change now?
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right. I think, the biggest pro has just been being surrounded by Lutheran doctrine, Lutheran teachers. Like staying in the Lutheran bubble has definite benefits of just being always surrounded by the Word of God and always having opportunities for chapel, always having all of those good connections to Lutheran doctrine. I think I remember in high school and even in college thinking that like small schools are great because you get a lot, and I should clarify, my Lutheran schools were all pretty small. My graduating class in grade school was 7 and my graduating class in high school was 58. And Concordia universities aren't huge. So always a smaller school experience. And I think the biggest downside personally was just a lack of opportunity for a variety of different things. I would have appreciated having like other AP options in high school or other vocational options. Like I looked at the public schools in my area. There was a much broader educational experience that I could have had with a lot more topics, a lot more subjects, different like study abroad opportunities that I just didn't have access to as a kid, as a Lutheran school kid. And in college too, like you just have more opportunity if you go to a bigger state school. But the pro outweighed the con for my family for sure. And as I made, grad school choices too, like I made that choice as an adult, but that was the same reason I ended up at another Concordia for grad school, was because of the opportunities to study at a faith-based institution, having a Lutheran approach to my education. So that's been my experience.
And my experience is almost the exact opposite. So I did go to, I believe, if I recall what I was told, I don't remember it, but I believe I went to a Baptist preschool.
Interesting.
Possibly also the first part of my kindergarten year was at a Baptist school. I'm not totally clear. But then we moved, and from then on I was in public schools, a number of different schools. I moved a fair bit growing up. I did have not complete polar opposite. I did have 3 years in a Lutheran school, 2 Lutheran schools, I guess, during middle school. And then the rest through high school, the rest of that was then all public schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then for university, I went to a private university, but not a Concordia. Shocking, I know. Everyone's, aren't you a deaconess? I'm like, no, I'm
Aren't
not.
you a deaconess?
No.
Oh. Whoops. Got those show notes all wrong.
So anyway, totally different approach. To an extent, part of it was due to like circumstances and availability. When I was growing up in Little Rock, I don't believe, I don't know, maybe there was a Lutheran school, maybe not, but Little Rock, Arkansas is not a hotbed of Lutherans. Then we moved to New Orleans, even fewer Lutherans. And so there was a Lutheran school, but I don't know if it was, I never really asked my parents. I don't know if it was finances as why we didn't go there, or if, they were just like, well, the local public school is a good school and I could walk there instead of having to drive. I don't know the decision process, but we did not go to the Lutheran school there. During seminary years is when we were at Lutheran schools. And part of that is because we were, one, with moving so much at that time, my parents thought that would be a helpful thing to have the support of a smaller school while at the same time having, knowing that this is a Lutheran school, you're feeling good about what your kids are learning and that sort of thing. And I believe it was free for the field worker to send their kids to the Lutheran school that we were assigned to.
Nice perk.
Yeah, I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty darn sure because we were so poor during seminary. I can't imagine that my parents were shelling out tuition. Yeah. Could be wrong, but anyway, pretty sure that was a benefit that the church gave to their field workers. And then for high school, though, the fact that I didn't go to the Lutheran high school for the last year of seminary, but instead went to the public school makes me, again, think that money was part of the obstacle there. Yeah. And it was a good Lutheran, a good high school that I went to. And then when we moved for the rest of high school, we were in a very small town. There were no Lutheran schools anywhere nearby. So that was not an option. And both of my parents worked at that point. My mom was a teacher in the local public school. And so that's then where we attended. And I'm sure that there's many, many good things about attending Lutheran schools that come with it. I have a hard time because I know that the school landscape has changed tremendously in my adult lifetime, not even just in my lifetime, but even just in, the time that I've been an adult. Yeah. It's changed a lot. And so I know it's not fair for me to say, well, this is how it was for me, so therefore these benefits still apply. But I really appreciated the chance to be not in the Lutheran bubble, partly because I'm a pastor's kid. And so, my family was very involved in our church. And so it was an opportunity to learn how to interact with people who were not in that group. So I appreciated that. I appreciated not having my first, I don't know, I felt like it prepared me well for college. The school I went to had no AP stuff. We were a small, poor country high school, so I didn't get that. And yet at the same time, between my parents' expectations and what was available, I felt very well prepared for college. But also that's, as Rachel pointed out, my own personal educational. I learn easily.
Yeah.
I
expect nothing less from you.
I like to learn. I like school. So that was never a challenge. It was never for any of my siblings and I. It was never like, oh, it's so hard to learn. No, we could do that with their hands tied behind our backs.
Yeah.
So that's my experience with it. And I enjoyed it. And I liked the preparation that I had. I liked the experience of having friends who some were Christians, some were not, and just learning how to talk about my faith and learn how to listen about theirs.
Yeah.
All of those are good things. So yeah, I really appreciated my experiences growing up. And one other thing that I got the most in New Orleans from being in New Orleans and in a public school in New Orleans, I got exposed to a tremendous diversity of student population. I look back at my little elementary school yearbook and I'm like, holy cow. It is a very from all sorts of country. Like I'm looking at the names. I'm like, well, these names are coming from all over the world in their origins, not those individual people, but their family origin has connections all over the place.
That's so cool.
Which was a really cool thing to have. And that was partly due to the makeup of New Orleans. But I appreciate having that as part of my foundation.
That's cool.
Yeah. So ladies listening, you heard it here. You can be 100% Lutheran school educated or primarily public school educated and still grow up to be a faithful, lovely, intelligent Lutheran adult.
Exactly.
Then if you take nothing else away from this, take that.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible. And I'm so glad that you all had the educational experiences that you did. So mine, of course, I'm not going to go deep into it, but I started school at an international primary school in Papua New Guinea.
Right.
3 years there. I was a minority.
Yeah.
Racial, only American family in the school. And then, let's see, little homeschooling, some Lutheran school, some public school, some more public school, some Baptist school, some more homeschooling, and some more public school before going to a Concordia for college and a public university for graduate school. So, all over the place. But you're right, Erin, because the landscape has changed a lot. So much of the anxiety we're feeling right now as parents is recognizing that the reality facing our kids is substantially different from the one that we grew up in.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk less about my journey as a student and more about my journey as a parent for the rest of this. And we'll go through it in stages. I'll sort of walk you through our journey and look at the pros and cons that we discovered for each one of these options. So chapter 1, charter schools. I was working full time. Homeschooling was not going to be an option for a while. Lutheran schools were out of our budget. But I was uncomfortable with the public school system in our area. And so our oldest daughter actually did her kindergarten year in a charter school. And this was lovely. Definite pros to this. Pro number 1, it was free. We were broke and it was free. Great.
Yeah. That's a great pro for a lot of families.
But it also offered an alternative to our public school system. And in this case, we really lucked out because the people who had created this charter school, many of them were devout Christians who were looking for just this opportunity to sort of offer an alternative to families that were uncomfortable with the public school system. That said, a con is the teachers may have gone to church on Sunday, but the school was still 100% secular. There was no God stuff there. And even though our school was, I think, a really wonderful example of what charter school education can do, not all charter schools are the same.
Yeah.
You can't look at the charter school and be like, oh, this is automatically going to be superior to the public school system. Many of them are mediocre at best.
Yeah.
But if you take them on a case-by-case basis, it can be a wonderful opportunity to expand your choices. And our daughter had a great year there. But chapter 2 in our educational journey would be Lutheran schools, we did a medium downtown school, a tiny rural school, and then a large suburban school. Bing, bang, bong. 3 different Lutheran school experiences.
Okay.
And this we loved, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly. So the pros, obviously, Sarah, you know so well the pros to a Lutheran education. And I'm so just thankful for and proud of all our Lutheran educators out there because they are doing the Lord's work.
Mm-hmm.
Pros were definitely those Lutheran school teachers and administrators, wonderful, godly, faithful people who often work for peanuts to give our children a faith-based education. And it's beautiful. We loved the chapel, the memory work, the Bible stories built into the everyday, the fact that, you know, religion and theology were a subject taught in school, but also things like service projects and mission focus. That was wonderful. Loved the statements of faith and the moral codes that they, you know, made available. I even like the dress code. So it definitely cuts down on drama in the morning if I can just if the school says you can't wear that.
I hated dress codes, but that's a different podcast.
Well, your mom probably loved them. So.
Probably, yes.
I loved the respect for scripture that was infused throughout every school policy, every curriculum choice, especially with regards to things like sex education or scientific origins, you know, that knowing that what they were hearing at school was going to reinforce what we were telling them at home.
Yeah.
That is so valuable. And I loved it. I loved the way that, especially when a church and school are sort of together, the opportunity for that like whole life faith-based community is so wonderful. The fellowship there.
Yeah.
Loved the small class sizes, although there is a small that is too small.
Yes.
One of our daughters was the only kid in her class for 3 years running. Oof. And that's even in a like multiple class split. That's kind of hard on a kid.
Yeah.
So, you know, 5 would be great. 1 is less than ideal. But yeah, the small classes, the one-on-one attention, just wonderful. Yeah. And of course, that beautiful Lutheran school choir experience.
Yes.
You are going to be hard pressed to find a tone deaf child in a Lutheran school. And it's glorious. So the cons of Lutheran school, and there were a few, is it's expensive. I'll say it right out there. Private school tuition is expensive. And not only is it expensive, but it also, somehow they're still always short on funds. So like you can be paying tuition hand over fist. I think we paid more, at least one year we paid more on tuition than we did on groceries.
Yeah.
You can pay money to the school hand over fist, and they're always still turning around to ask you to do fundraising, which got on my nerves a little bit.
Yeah.
But yes, even with tuition that is exorbitant for many families, the schools are never going to have the budget that the public schools have. And so they feel it and you feel it. Car lines. Like we did have one Lutheran school that owned a bus and they drove it all around a wide area. And that was great. Although our kids did spend 2 hours a day on the bus for a while.
Yeah, that was my experience with one of the Lutheran schools. They did have a bus, but well, in the morning, we were the last on, so that was nice. But in the afternoon, we were the last off. So, yeah.
But more common is anytime anyone needs to be driven anywhere, parents do the driving. And so really good at navigating those long car lines in the morning and at pickup time.
Yeah. Some of those after school rides are some of my favorite memories from grade school because we used to drive my friends home or drive because my mom was like a designated carpooler. So she would drive us to volleyball practice and sports stuff and all the things. So those were fun times in the car with my friends.
It's a lot.
And also
so
driving
much school driving.
High school. Every day of my childhood because I have 2 older brothers. So it was a half-hour drive between Lutheran schools every day.
So much
Sorry,
driving.
Mom, for every day I begged for a Frosty on that drive because it was every day.
She only gave it once and regretted it ever since.
Yes. We drove by Wendy's, so.
Oh, yeah.
Frosty. Anyway, sorry.
So, that's all right. No. This is good stuff. See, you guys are reinforcing, are validating what I have to say. Another downside, and this is a weird thing to complain about, but so all the Lutheran school teachers that we were blessed to have in our lives were all devout Lutheran Christian people.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the families that came to the school were.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might have this values clash happening in the classroom. And that sometimes set itself up for some, tension between students. And in at least one case in our family, there was some bullying. If one student holds faithfully to the official teaching of the school and one student doesn't, well, who's going to pick on whom in that instance?
Yeah.
So that was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then you also have this sort of tendency sometimes among some Lutheran or Christian school families to assume that because the school is teaching them Christianity, they don't have to reinforce it at home. That there's this tendency to outsource, to say, well, between church and school, they're getting all the Christianity they need. I don't have to be intentional about it myself.
Yeah.
So that was a mild con. And then also that little bullying problem. And again, it wasn't a problem in 2 out of 3 schools that we went to, but in one of them, it was a small problem. Because it's a tuition-based private school, there's a sort of elitism, a poshness about many of our Lutheran schools, which is great. It draws people in from the community, that they want what we've got in terms of this exemplary educational experience. But if you've got a mixture of families who are really scraping and sacrificing even to send their kids to that school, and families who have obviously chosen it because they can afford a more elite educational experience, then again, there's some tension there.
Yeah. I experienced some of that for sure.
I believe it. So, yes, that was our Lutheran school experience. It was, on the whole, it was wonderful, despite grousing about the budget and time investment. I never really regretted it. I think the kids had a great experience in our Lutheran schools. And like I said, I'm so thankful for them. However, not everyone lives in an area where you can find a Lutheran school, like us.
Yeah.
So chapter 3 of our educational experience would be what I call homeschool part 1.
Okay.
The bad one.
Oh, no.
Because as I've found, there are good and bad ways to do homeschooling. There are ways to do it that are wonderfully rewarding, and there are ways to do it that make you want to pull your hair out every day. And this is why, even though I love homeschooling, I could not possibly recommend it for every family or make anyone feel bad because they don't feel about it the way I do. So, yes, chapter 3, homeschool part 1. The pros of our first attempt of homeschooling: curricular freedom. Like, design your own courses. Great.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a master's in English. I love putting together an English curriculum. Really fun. I always get a proper curriculum in subjects I don't feel comfortable in. But yes, so much freedom. We had scheduling freedom. We had shorter days. It was more efficient. I saw a really funny Facebook reel earlier today. Somehow it thought I was researching homeschooling. I don't know why Facebook knew that, but whatever. Anywhere where it was a homeschooler talking to a public schooler and said, "Wow, you go to school for 7 hours every day? If I put in that kind of time, I could have graduated at age 10. And it is possible that because so much of the standard 7-hour school day is a combination of the inefficiency of having to educate 30 kids at a time and the necessity to keep those kids off the streets most of the day while their parents are at work. So, yes, homeschooling definitely gave us a more efficient way to use our time and some strong family togetherness. So that part was good. But the cons of homeschool part 1 were pretty significant as well. One, way too much freedom. You have to be so incredibly disciplined and have a will of iron to homeschool. And make a good go of it. And I'm not saying that homeschool moms really need to be just like Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music with their whistles and their uniforms, regimented, everything broken down by half-hour segments. But if you just say, okay, here's your schoolwork for today. Have fun, kids. When you're done, and then your time's your own. And if you finish in 2 hours, well, great. That's just more time that you can watch YouTube in the afternoon.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that is a quick road to absolute frustrating chaos, which is, where we partly ended up. Now, granted, homeschool part 1 took place primarily during the COVID pandemic, where everyone was experiencing chaos. So I don't know how much of it was the result of the pandemic or just my own absolute ineptitude. But yeah, because of that, we also found that homeschool part 1, the con, was loneliness and isolation. Mm-hmm. We were trying to do as much homeschool as possible at home, which meant, not a whole lot of driving around to activities. Of course, we couldn't because it was COVID.
Exactly.
Right.
But yeah, we were trying to homeschool in the home, and that proved to be very lonely for everybody. It's cheaper than private school, but still not free. Mm-hmm. You can spend a lot of money at Christian book distributors buying Saxon math books every year, which I'm going to do in a couple of weeks again. So there is still an expense associated with it. One of the hardest parts for me, and it still continues a little bit to this day, but really hard for me at this point, was what I'm going to call performance anxiety. This constant nagging fear that the education they're getting isn't good enough. That they're going to not get into college, or they're going to get into college and they're going to fail, or they're going to be absolutely good for nothing in this life except couch surfing and not have any real skills, or just a wasted opportunity. And this can really rob your joy as a homeschooler, and it did mine.
Yeah.
The other thing that I always point out for homeschooling is that it requires a stay-home parent who considers homeschooling a day job. Like, I may have side gigs. Here I am sitting and podcasting with you guys right now. The homeschooling is my full-time job, and everything else has to fit in around the edges. And this represents a massive opportunity cost. The biggest cost for homeschooling is not the books. It's not the lessons. It's what we give up by me not having a full-time career. It's the lost salary.
Yeah.
And so that's huge. It requires a supportive spouse who is willing to bear the entire cost, not only of supporting the basic needs, rent and groceries and whatnot, but also all those homeschool extras. I will sometimes look at my husband and say, Ken, thank you so much, because I'm about to spend a whole lot of your money to buy stuff for your kids again. And that is a big ask of any marriage. So again, do not recommend homeschooling if you are prone to household chaos, performance anxiety, or if you in your marriage are not both 100% committed to making it work, because then it's just asking for tension and resentment and all the rest. So after 2 years of homeschool part 1, we all had a big family sit down together, said, we love the homeschooling, but we're about to move. Why don't we try out the public school system in this small town area? Relatively small town. The public schools are highly rated.
Okay.
Apparently, they will get you very college and career ready. So we did that. My younger daughters for half a year and my older kids for a full year. And boy, there were some pros to this. I won't lie. Not only was it 100% free, but it came with all the bells and whistles. Like buses, not just the regular buses, but they had activity buses. So if your kids stayed late, they could catch a second bus. The year we were doing it, because of the COVID thing, they didn't just offer free breakfast and lunch to low-income kids. They gave it to everybody. They fed my kids 2/3 of their meals for the day. And then during the summer, they had bag lunches available for public school families. They had a free health clinic on site. They had not only guidance counseling, but like free mental health counseling service. They had all the extracurriculars were paid for. I mean, like it was all inclusive and a one-stop shop for everything. You got your sports, your arts, your clubs, all of them in one building. I didn't have to drive. I didn't have to pay. It was wonderful. I mean, sort of. That aspect was nice. It took away my anxiety about the transition to college because, again, you've got not only someone else making the transcript. By the way, if you're a homeschool mom, you get to put your own transcripts together, and that is frankly terrifying.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, those AP courses, honors courses, they had dual enrollment courses, like no problem whatsoever signing up for your SATs or other college entrance exams. They just did it during the school day. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And I didn't need to be involved at all. Like, I could just say goodbye in the morning and hello in the evening, and my time otherwise during the day was mine.
No grading.
No grading.
I hate the grading. I really do. So yeah, there were some definite pros to the point that any family that chooses that option, I can't really judge them for that at all, because that is a really cool thing that, and obviously not every school district pays for all the things that some of them you have to pay for sports, some of them you have to pay for a lot of other things. But this school district was very all inclusive. But so that there were pros, yay for pros, but there were also cons.
Yeah.
Because I didn't need to be involved, but honestly, I wasn't really welcome to be involved. Public schools, even, and at the elementary school level, there are usually more opportunities for parent involvement. But at the middle and high school level, parents are often regarded kind of as this like nuisance force. Like we have to meet with them every once in a while because school says we have to, but really they just need to keep their hands out.
Yeah. Which is like opposite from a lot of Lutheran schools.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very different. And maybe that was just my perception, but that was kind of the feeling I had. This is our world. Your kids come here. They're ours. When they're done, they'll come home and then they're yours. Let's each stay in our lanes.
Yeah.
Which, as a involved parent, that was kind of rough. The big con, let's just get this out of the way, is that my kids were force-fed a worldview that was, in many cases, totally at odds with their Christian faith.
Yeah.
And that was something we had to work around every day.
Yeah.
And they dealt with it in different ways. Everything from absorb the prevailing secular worldview and bring it home to reject the secular worldview and get really angry or internalize the tension and live in a state of constant anxiety.
That's not good.
And apparently hair loss. That was weird.
Ooh, not good.
No. And I know families that do this so well and navigate it so well, and their kids are just, having a great time with it. But that was not our experience.
Yeah.
Right? We found out that, yes, you can be lonely at home surrounded by your siblings, but you can also be lonely in a crowd of people that you have nothing in common with.
Yeah. Yep.
You can totally fall through the cracks and get lost.
Yeah.
And, you've got those social pressures to conform. Like, obviously, what the teacher's perspective on many moral and social issues was one source of tension, but the fact that the kids, whether it was in fashion or technology or pop culture, they also were creating this tension. I keep coming back to the word tension. That was just what we experienced, that they didn't really want to conform to all of that, but they felt like they needed to if they didn't want to be completely ostracized.
Yeah.
So, yes, in our case, in many cases, the pros outweigh the cons when it comes to public school. In our case, we came to the end of the year, or in the case of the younger girls, the end of the semester, and said, let's try this homeschooling thing again.
Yeah.
We're going to do it different this time, but this is not working for us.
Yeah.
So, homeschool part 2. A little better. So this time around, made some changes, said yes to joining a co-op. We had a co-op for part of our homeschool part 1 experience, but it was a drop-off co-op. So this time we joined a parent-led co-op.
Yeah, those are fun.
I know. So much fun. Connected with a co-op and just started saying yes to extracurriculars.
Okay.
Like we would always keep our mornings for academic work until about 1:00. But anything that happened after 1:00, if everyone was like in a good place where they could finish things up in the evening, if they hadn't earlier, we just started saying yes to it. And that was pretty actually amazing. It was also very crazy. So we had a lot of extras. We also had more boundaries and routines. I made very strict rules about screen time. We got rid of a bunch of personal devices, Chromebooks and old iPhones and things like that, and instead bought one high-powered family desktop that all the kids could take turns on.
Okay.
We set actual timers and screen time limits on most of our devices. Like, it's out of my hands. The internet just turns off after a certain amount of time. I don't.
It's amazing how powerful those timers are, though, even if you set them yourself to just like curb your own digital usage. It's amazing how well they work. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the biggest change I made, there were lots of little changes, but the biggest change was a change in perspective. Realizing that even though, yes, academically, the public school had been a good experience, spiritually, it was crushing. Yeah. And so I changed my focus. I said, I want my kids to be equipped for life, but mostly I want to have them equipped for eternity.
Yeah.
And really, really focus on the spiritual side of every day. And all, it's like, what does the scripture say? Matthew 6, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Like if you put the soul first, the mind will follow.
Yeah.
Even the body will follow because you start to have greater personal discipline, and it's just good. So the pros of this kind of homeschooling is, one, it's tailored to each child.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just one size fits all. My oldest daughter is an animation major who is huge into storytelling. So her senior project was writing an illustrated short novel. My son is going into government and wants to go into law and politics. His senior project was putting together a city-state constitution and imaginary political party platform.
Wow.
Okay.
Like, if I had assigned that to my daughter, it would not have been a good fit for her. And likewise.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to really look at each child's gifts and goals and say, all right, what are we going to do here to get you as prepared as possible for the future that you want? So that was great. I love the relationship that my kids have with each other. The sibling friendships, the closeness, the supportiveness. And there are times when they get a little salty. But on the whole, they are really good to one another. And I love that. And I love their friends. Oh my goodness. I don't think during our public school year, they made a single friend of the caliber of which they now have, a dozen or more. That we've got this we have had. Now we're moving again. Hopefully we got to start from scratch. But a strong Christian community with families who share our values and kids who share their interests. But we know how to do that now. And that's great. We have the freedom to work prayer and scripture and constructive conversations into every hour of the day. I love homeschooling now because it's a lifestyle. It's not like a 9-to-5 project. It's a whole lifestyle. My kids don't realize this. They probably do realize this. But just because they finish their math, science, English, and history for the day doesn't mean they finish their learning.
Right.
And this is, again, a little thing. I love controlling the reading list.
Yeah.
The books that my kids were assigned in public school were bleak. All of them. But to be able to choose books that will help their souls grow deep and not just jaded is a huge plus for me. And I loved all those extras: church choir, confirmation classes, youth group, co-op, drama, speech and debate, running club, piano lessons, trail life, American Heritage Girls, fencing, rowing, sailing. There might have been one or two more, but it was like so many adventures and so much opportunity for enriching and seeing my kids thrive. Like, what even is that? It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there were cons to this one as well. Erin, you valued the diversity at your New Orleans public school. Not a whole lot of diversity in our educational community at present. Not a whole lot of adversity. And I worry about that sometimes. Will my kids have been too sheltered growing up? I don't know. Time will tell. There's all those piano lessons and fencing lessons and whatnot all cost money and time. We're always on the go. We are a homeschool family who are never home. We're trying to turn over a new leaf this fall and not get sucked into quite the same vortex. That performance anxiety is still there, although I tell you, it's a lot less now that 2 of my kids have been accepted into college.
Yeah, there you go.
I know that their education is not 100% calibrated to the public school expectations, and it doesn't line up in a one-to-one way with what the public schools are learning. I worry about that sometimes, but not as much as I used to. And I see, too, that academic achievement can vary widely based on family choices. Like within our homeschool within our homeschool communities, you'll have some kids that are ready to start college, in 11th grade, and you'll have some kids who are struggling to read in 8th grade. But then you actually have that same thing in public school. It's just broadened out enough that you don't notice it a lot of the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I still have that performance anxiety, and I will fully admit that my kids are weird. But I think mostly it's in a good way. So that is our journey up to this date. I still have a couple of kids to bring through. And so who knows what opportunities and choices we'll make in the future. Every year for every child, we have the conversation and make the decision all over again. We're homeschooling the younger 2 again for this year, and I feel really positive about it. And I love where we've ended up, but I fully acknowledge that it might not work always for us, and it almost certainly wouldn't work exactly like we do it for another family.
Yeah.
You could try all of these things that I've done and still not be happy with your kid's education. Or you may say, I don't want to be changing schools every couple of years. Whatever we pick early on, that's what we're going to stick with. Come rain or shine. And that's great. That offers us stability in itself. Or you may even find yourself choosing a school option that is not listed above. We haven't done everything. You could do a non-Lutheran Christian school, a Catholic school, a classical school. You could do a private school that isn't religious. You could do a more structured homeschool program. There are so many options these days, you guys. Homeschooling has grown so much in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But through more of an all-inclusive co-op or a group like Classical Conversations, you can do virtual school. So many public school systems now offer virtual learning opportunities. And then there are some Christian and even Lutheran online schools, like I think especially of Wittenberg Academy, which is a 100% online LCMS classical high school.
Yep.
Do they do younger grades as well? They probably do.
I think there's some options for younger grades, but it works slightly differently, if I remember right.
They have a different model. But yeah, if you're off in the middle of nowhere and you want to explore an online LCMS option, Wittenberg Academy or something like that. A lot of kids we know do dual enrollment in community college during their high school years. And then even, I didn't even know about this until a few years ago, boarding school. Did you know there is an LCMS boarding school in Concordia, Missouri?
My parents graduated from it.
My husband graduated from there.
Yeah, I think you're the last one to know that.
Yeah,
Rachel.
I think so.
Absolutely the last one to know that. So lots of options. What have I missed? Are there other educational options that you guys are aware of? Apparently the boarding school was a thing for you all.
I mean, that covers the list that I had in my head. I know classical Lutheran schools are also something that they're growing quite a bit.
Yeah.
But
so many options, and whatever you choose, you'll be wondering, did I make the right choice?
Yeah.
So question for Aaron and Sarah, obviously you guys don't have school children under your guardianship at present, but if you did, if you were raising children, what would you choose? Or what would you start with, knowing that it might not be your final choice?
Yeah. I mean, if I had the opportunity to homeschool, I would like to think that I would do it, but it also terrifies me to no end to think that I would be in charge of all of that all day, all the time.
Your fear is just.
However, now that I've actually experienced what a co-op, like a parent-led co-op does, I love the co-op model. It is amazing. It is so exciting, and the kids love it. And then they have their groups, and so like that would still probably be my first choice if that was like a thing that I could do. Otherwise, either Lutheran school, I would still go Lutheran school, or especially classical. I love the classical education model. It's just it just is really amazing to me. So that would be my choice.
Yeah,
if I had to choose.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. I guess it would sort of depend. Similar to Sarah, am I still working full time, or am I not, and instead homeschooling full time? That would be an interesting thing. I think it would need to be one of those things where I would really consider carefully what the kids would actually need. Am I still living in the city? If so, that does put certain things. I would not choose to send my kids. Honestly, I wouldn't choose to send them to St. Louis public schools. Might consider charter schools, might consider private schools, but just living in the city, I wouldn't choose those schools. High schools are better. Elementary school and middle school, I wouldn't choose. There are some high schools that are better, but we also do have a really great Lutheran high school. I think I would also be considering, like, what do the other kids at the church do? Are the kids able to go to the same school? And so they have a group of friends that offers some continuity with them. Growing up, I went to a public high school, but since there was only the one public high school in my town, the other kids at my church also went to that same school. And so there was that opportunity for those friendships that do sort of cross over bleed over some of those divisions that we have in our life. And I think that is a nice thing. So is there an opportunity for those kids to actually go to the same school as some of the others, kids at the church, so that there can be some of those friendships and support at school as well as at church, and encouraging in both directions? I think that would be something else that I would want to really consider. I don't have a straightforward answer, but I think those would be some of the things that I would think about.
Yeah.
Well, I think your straightforward answer is I would figure it out on the fly, like everybody else.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, that's great. And so that is the first of what I'm going to call my final takeaways from this big question conversation. There is no one right answer to this question.
Mm-hmm.
Your results may vary. You may find that any one, or one that I haven't thought of these options, works really well for your kids, for your family. And that's great. Takeaway number 2, love your kids.
Yep.
Like, that's huge. I don't have to tell you to do that, though, because I bet you all do. Pray for guidance
Mm-hmm.
and courage to follow through on that guidance, because sometimes it can be very terrifying. Remember to put the needs of your children's souls above the needs of their future resumes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because a career is 40 years? And eternity is forever.
Yep.
So keep it all in perspective. And to that end, be intentional about faith formation. Wherever you send your kids to school, it does not take away your responsibility to teach them the faith in your home.
Yep.
Make time for Bible and prayer for yourself, because you need it. You're a parent, and as a family every day. This is sounding really preachy, but I promise practical tips. So here we go. Of course, be connected to the body of Christ. Like, be involved at church. The kids who I've seen in public school systems who do the best spiritually and emotionally are those with vibrant, robust, multi-generational congregations that are there for them, that they've been connected to consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, that has such an enormously grounding influence that it can counteract a whole lot of, secular ideology.
It's true.
Yeah.
So like you said, Erin, choosing a school where you know that your kids' church friends are going to be, and support them and love them, like that's huge. That'd be great. Be united as a family. Like husband and wife have to be on the same page with this. We've had these conversations sometimes in our Facebook group of, mother will come on and say, I really want to do this for my family, but my husband just isn't on board. And that is really rough. And I feel for you ladies, because whatever you do, you got to walk together. And the kids too, like loop them in on the conversation. Every time we've made a change, we've sat them down if they were old enough, to like have anything to say. We've sat them down and asked for them and made sure we were all on the same page. Asked for their input. Be ready to pivot if something isn't working. It was a weird thing for me to call the kids' school and say, I know we just got here, but we're going to be switching back to homeschool after Christmas. But that was exactly the right decision to make at that time. So ready to pivot and be ready to be involved in your children's education no matter what. It may be that you're a homeschooler and you're doing it, 10 hours a day. Well, let's be honest, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You are involved. You are it. You are the thing. Or it could be you're in a public school where, they're kind of regarded as a nuisance. Either way, be involved. It's a different kind of work. But just be prepared. Educating your kids is going to be hard work, full stop. It's just what it is. And so be ready to sacrifice your time, your money, and perhaps your professional opportunity. Definitely has been in my case for your children's education and well-being. When I stop, and I shouldn't do this, and I don't do it very often, but when I just do the mental math on the number of fancy vacations and nice cars we could have afforded if we weren't A, paying for school tuition, or B, having me not work so that I could stay home and homeschool the children. Like it's kind of mind blowing. And like I said, I shouldn't do this very often because wow, we could have an RV sitting in the driveway right now if I had just plunked them down in the free educational option and spent my days working. But I have no regrets. I really love my life and I'm very happy for where we are at present. And then I know these decisions are so fraught with anxiety. And so my last takeaway is this. Remember that your kids are God's kids and that He loves them, will never stop caring for them and never stop providing for them. And that no choice you make or don't make can take away the blessed reality that Christ died for your children and has united them to Himself in holy baptism. And so, choosing your educational option is tough, but you can be at peace. So that's all I got.
Nice. Good
Hopefully
advice.
that offers a bit of answers or insights. A bit of answers. What kind of sentence is that?
What
Been
are
a
you
long
teaching your
episode,
kids?
everyone. Hopefully that gives you something to chew on. And if it doesn't,
and a little balm for the anxiety and tension that you were saying is always there. That last one especially offers some ease for that.
Yeah. This is definitely a big question. And like you said, there's really no one answer for any one family. It's all dependent on so many factors. But at the end of the day, do what's best for your family and fulfill your vocation. I mean, it all comes down to vocation, right?
Right.
Fulfilling your vocation as your parent, as you are a parent to your child, what's best for your kids in your situation. So, there you go.
Whatever you choose, I got your back.
Well, this has been really great, Rachel, for being vulnerable in this episode. And I'm sure ladies in our Facebook group and on our Instagram page have some of their own stories and their own opinions and their own life experiences to share as well. So ladies, if you want to share your own stories about how you've made your educational choices for your children, we'd love to hear them in our Facebook group, the Lutheran Ladies Lounge. You can join us there. You can also comment on our episode posts on our Instagram page at Lutheran Ladies Lounge. You can sign up for our e-newsletter in the show notes for this episode, or you can send us an email, lutheranladies@kfuo.org. You can find all of our podcasts at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge, or on your favorite podcasting app, or on the KFUO radio app. You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
And I'm Rachel.
Views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a review for us too. If you love the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast, consider financially supporting our producer, KFUO Radio, so we can keep doing what we do. Find out how at kfuo.org/give. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast is underwritten in part by Lutheran Heritage Foundation. LHF translates, publishes, distributes, and introduces books that are Bible-based, Christ-centered, and Reformation-driven. Learn more about their global ministry and how to support their projects at lhfmissions.org.